One day, watching young factory workers playing football against Westminster Schoolboys, our king had a brilliant idea. He conceived an annual combined holiday for young workers and public schoolboys, and the Duke of York's camp was born. Each year, His Majesty spends a few days with the boys, appoints himself honorary cameraman, and here's the picture he took. Everywhere, the king leads the fun. He joins in the camp sing-song. At Barkingside in 1935, our Queen attends a children's folk dancing display. Here, the King and Queen are at the Royal Hospital School at Greenwich on Prize Day. In 1936, our Queen opened the Foundling playground, and here's what she said on that occasion.
These fields, named after the children's friend of long ago, Thomas Coram, have been secured for them today by the labour and love of many living friends. And I have much pleasure now in declaring them open for the use and enjoyment of the children of London for all time to come. I have one other thing to say, which is that I ask for a half holiday for the children in commemoration of this happy day.
But members of the House of Windsor do not live in a perpetual atmosphere of foundation stones, opening ceremonies and prize givings. Our King and Queen are as keen on sport as the majority of their subjects. Here, His Majesty is inspecting playing fields at Hampton Wick. The King was only allowed a very short time on the field when he kicked off in a match between the Spurs and Corinthians in aid of a dockland settlement. Here he is out with the Beaver Hunt in a typical English background. At Liverpool in 1923, accompanied by Lord Derby, our King and Queen attend the summer meeting and seem to enjoy the racing as much as anyone. In 1924, the King goes motorboat racing at Torquay for a challenge cup he has presented. She must be doing 20 knots. Here he undergoes one of the most terrible ordeals known to mortal man, that of playing himself in as captain of the Royal and Ancient Golf Club St Andrews. There's nothing wrong with the drive, but it costs him a sovereign to get the ball back from the caddy. This historic picture, taken at the opening of the Thames Yacht Club Regatta, shows our present King and Queen with King George V on board the famous old yacht Britannia, now alas no more. An inspiring sight in these over-mechanized days as the great yachts maneuver for position on the starting line. The royal party amongst the crew on the Britannia's deck. Back to football again, at the Schoolboys International, England versus Scotland. The match over, our King awards the caps. From Highbury in 1934 to the Braemar gathering of the same year. And now the games are on. Up goes the caber, and down comes something that to southern eyes looks uncommonly like a telegraph pole. It is one of the duties of members of the House of Windsor to represent the throne at the reception of foreign royalty and on visits overseas. In 1922, our King, as Duke of York, acted as chief witness at the Serbian royal wedding and played a prominent part in the festivities which enlivened Belgrade for days. The same year, he crossed the Channel to represent his country and lay the foundation stone of a war memorial at Dunkirk, the naval base that was so often bombed by German aircraft during the war. In 1931, our King and Queen paid a state visit to Paris to represent Great Britain at the great colonial exhibition. Paris at that time was a mirror of the life of a colonial empire, second only in extent and variety to that over which King George VI now reigns. Two years later, King Faisal of Iraq arrived on a state visit to Britain. Iraq was originally part of the Turkish Empire, then a mandated territory, now an independent state, member of the League of Nations. King Faisal was greeted by our present king at Dover, and after inspecting the guard of honor, the royal visitor continued his journey to London. At Victoria Station, the Arab king was met by King George V, the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Gloucester, and members of the British cabinet. An historic scene as the two kings walk across the platform and later drive in a state procession to Buckingham Palace.